Hi everyone, here is your crash course for what was going on during the 1960s. As you may be aware, this was a time in American history where we had a lot of revolutions going on and movements. We had the gay rights movement, women's rights movement, civil rights movement, a lot of big changes taking place. Initially when we started the decade out, we were still following the guidelines of the 50s, where being single was savage, and then we start to see that we're bridging throughout the 1960s towards the end of the decade into a very different way of thinking about what it's like to be single and the meanings behind that, and kind of changing as a society because of it. So looking at the decade from 1960 going to 69, here's the price of a difference between a gallon of gas, a new car. So as you can see, like annual income over the decade went up quite a bit. Price of a house kind of compensated for that as well. Then I always give you some of the fun slang. So a skirt is a girl, candy ass, hacked, fuzz, bitchin'. I feel like a lot of the things we see here are things that people still say, or maybe it's just me, I don't know. Some of the things that people were doing during the 60s, actually going for drives in the family car, playing board games. Twister actually came out during the 60s, watching TV shows like Gilligan's Island, you maybe grew up with that, in reruns. Baseball had its first televised game in 66, and the first Super Bowl was actually played in 67. So a lot of big things happening for sports during that time to help families bond as well. So during the early 60s, it was considered savage, not like savage we use the word today. I remember language is generational, but it was something was wrong with you basically if you were single during the early 60s. A very small percentage of the adult population was single, and they attributed it to many reasons. We'll get to that in a second. If you were single, something was wrong with you. So 80% of women in their 30s did not have a college degree, but did have a husband and children. Again, because in the early 60s, it was primarily the man's job to go out and make the money, and the woman's job to stay home and cook and clean, like we saw during the golden age of the 50s. If you scroll down the bottom, you can see 65 out of 100 kids lived with married parents, and that was exactly the situation where dad went to work and mom was home. So that was most prevalent. With regards to how we lived and our marriage in general, we married pretty young, but we started to see that age began to rise throughout the 60s as well. The average woman during the beginning of the 60s was getting married as a teenager, ages 16 to 19, and had an average of 3 or 4 kids, and fairly quickly, like you got married, you had kids, and you started on that path. It was very rare for children during these days to live with a never married mother, only 1 in 350. If you compare that data to 2013, 22 in 100 kids were living with a never married mother. So we've seen a huge change in that shift from the 60s to the modern day. So divorce actually doubled from 1960 to 1970. We used to believe that cohabitating, which is living together prior to marriage, was literally living in sin, and we saw that increased 6 times. So sixfold is a fancy way of saying that. So these are both pretty important things for you to know. So as we're going into the mid-60s and into the late 60s, we see that people are really starting to embrace a little bit more of the singles culture. Apartments were being built for people that were living alone. Singles bars and singles clubs were actually being opened up, changing a lot of the rules within dormitories for visitors of the opposite sex to be able to come and the times of day they were allowed to be there. We also saw the start of a sexual revolution, which included changes in the books that were being written, the way people were dressing, the movies people were making. Also, Hair was the first Broadway musical to actually show nudity. Started to have topless waitresses in facilities that had those. And then we also saw a lot of sexism and some racism in advertising. So I wanted to show you these. If we were in class, we would normally discuss them. So this says, it's nice to have a girl around the house, and she's literally being walked on and stepped on, like a rug being walked all over. It's an advertisement for his pants, actually. You can go back and look at these if you want with more time. This is to imply a woman cannot open the ketchup bottle. So you mean a woman can actually open it. It's easy enough that she can do it without her husband. This one shows an advertisement for ties. Show her it's a man's world. He's the breadwinner sitting in bed getting breakfast made, and she's down on her hands and knees. Christmas morning, she'll be happier with a Hoover, because that's what every woman wants on Christmas morning is a vacuum. Here's a man spanking his wife because of what she had purchased for coffee. And this one is to say that women like to have cigarette smoke and cigar smoke blow in her face, and she'll follow you anywhere. And then this ad was pretty controversial. This is a pretty racist ad. So we're painting the world white. You can watch this crash course if you want for a little bit of extra information about what was going on in the 60s. Again, if we were in class, we'd talk about this so much more. Lots and lots and lots of movements taking place. So this is Martin Luther King. This is Woodstock. This is John F. Kennedy right before he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. Again, Martin Luther King. This is actually Native Americans on Alcatraz, which is a prison off the coast of California. After the prison shut down, they were protesting to get their native land back. This is the Stonewall riots, which took place in the later 60s. It was pretty much accredited to the beginning of the gay rights movement. There was a raid at a gay bar. At that time, it was illegal in some states to be homosexual. Women's rights, first person to land on the moon, and then protesting the Vietnam War. So normally in groups in class, you guys would make these posters. These are your topics. And since we've went online this semester, you are supposed to do a digital poster making a PowerPoint slide. And the directions actually say to see the last page of the slideshow. And then these are your choices. If you do war on poverty programs, that would be really awesome. All of these are really good, but women's rights, civil rights, war on poverty, space and technology exploration. Some of you might be more interested in a little bit more of the facts behind the 60s rather than just what people wore, what they listened to. Woodstock would obviously be in this as well with music and hippies. So you will do an assignment for this for me as an attendance assignment since we won't be in class to make our posters, which really stinks because it's super fun. Anyway, that's the end of your 60s lecture, so go do your homework. Bye.